I feel like I should be doing stand-up or something. What does Michael McIntyre do? He doesn't do that, does he? He could do that. Maybe he does do it now. Who knows? I told, well, she knew it already, but for you guys, this is a true sort of story, and it's something that happened to me when I was 16. And it's sort of the meeting point of like two people, two lives. And it sort of started like any day, any other day. So I was sleeping. So under the starry firmament, I sleep, right? But I leave the dreamers at 9 a.m. And I'm waking to mellifluous sounds bound in their own quiet mayhem, and I rub my eyes of sleep, and I pull back the duvet cover to uncover this body that's ready to work and discover. So I got an audition today, right? It's my first audition to date. And I have this sort of nervousness and surplus, but I'll keep my head straight, because to be late is out of the question. So hop out of bed, get myself dressed. And as I said, I have an audition, and it's Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Okay, so it's 20 days, 20 performances, my dream at the age of 16. Now, I'd never really been one to dream before, as I'd seen and saw the hardship of men who dare to dream, and dreams come crashing down in cries and roars. But, I took a chance. So, dressed to impress, I opened my front door and left, chest exhaling these feelings of anxiety, but my mind was at rest, and as I walked, I addressed the location request and saw that Islington's Pleasance Theatre was the final destination of my quest. And I get to the tube station, right, and I walk past a beggar on the damp steps. And his eyes were half closed. I just supposed he was dozing. But there's a needle in his arm. It's decomposing his emotion. I mean, suppose he's overdosing on codeine and ibuprofens. But I just kept walking. And I fucking hated myself for the whole journey. Because I could have stayed and talked. Sat with him in the cold, maybe even gone for a walk, but I, the more fortunate, privileged guy, kept walking. Anyway, I arrive at Caledonian Road tube station and I tap out with my Oyster card. And while sheltering from the rain, I roll a thin cigarette, just sort of reveling in this feeling of molding, crumbling tobacco between my fingertips. And as I proceed to light and smoke the cigarette, this gang of 5 hooded men just run past me. And they're all shouting and swearing and passing the phrase, "He's a dead man," to one another. And I watch them run down the road and round the corner, leaving me in the rain smoking my cigarette. And, I just put them out of mind. It's just 5 kids messing around. So, I close my eyes and allow my mind to be drowned out by the rain sound. I think about this audition, right? So excited. So I'm walking down the road and I turn the corner, and then I see this sight that bites at my eyes. Right? It's a darkening pool of blood surrounded by the hoodies that ran past me a minute earlier. And they're just, stamping on the face of this limp, lifeless form. There was no stop to this beast, no peace at the eye of the storm. There was no stop to their rage. They did snarl and did transform into bloodthirsty monsters begotten from hate and scorn. And I just froze numb to my bone marrow. Harrowed by the stench of running blood and just this visual of 5 hooded figures with 5 different minds beating down upon this man, not once, but 5 times, and these 5 different men were 5 times unkind, just 5 pairs of eyes, but those 5 pairs were blind. And then I see it's my friend who's on the floor, right, the one who's broken and is bleeding, and now my heart's beating, and these feelings of inner demons are seething, and I don't believe what I'm seeing. I'm looking for higher reasons, but meanings have left this earth. Yes, we're blessed until death takes us to the darkness in the earth. Yes, we're blessed until death takes us off in the dark hearse, but while you're here and you're breathing, there'll be no coffin, no church, and I'm moving. Right, I'm just running towards my friend, and I'm shouting, and I'm screaming, "Get the fuck off him!" And all of a sudden, I'm just swallowed whole by this beast. Right, this beast of rage, and I'm pushed back and forth between its walls like a pummeling cage, and they're throwing fists from the right, and I'm throwing fists from the left, and I get hit in my right ear, and it all suddenly goes deaf, and I'm just holding my head now. Right, just trying to reduce this cacophony of blows, and I'm occasionally sort of lashing out to get them away from me. And I open my tightly shut eyes for an instant, and I see another figure joining the huddle, running in from a nearby estate. And as he runs in, I decide I have to move, and I have to move now. So I push off with all my might, but I get caught in the crowd, and the voices grow loud. I'm caught, and I feel drowned. And then I feel a hard punch on my back, which throws me down to the ground. And my head hits the concrete floor, and my nose bursts open. But I'm none the wiser. And dazed, I turn over to leave as a survivor. But he stands over me holding a bloody screwdriver. And then we lock eye contact. And within his eyes I can see a mixture of kind of like sadness and madness, like he knows what he's just done. And then he just thrusts forward once again, driving the screwdriver deeper into my right lung. And then the voices just go deathly silent. And it's just me alone on the street. And all I can hear is the echo of my own heartbeat, and I throw my head to the sky, and I keep my breathing really silent, soft. And for some reason, I still don't really know why, I think about my mum. I think about the words that I'd say to her since I last saw her. How I've got a little bit older, and with growing older, I've grown a little bit bolder. And now, admittedly, growing a little bit colder. Under the starry firmament I sleep, believe the dreamers at 9 a.m. Waking to rough blocks and dark plots, this is my teen mayhem. I rub my eyes of sleep, and I pull back the duvet cover to uncover this body that's ready to work and discover. So I'm going to my friend's house. So I leave my house and head on out. And I walk past the tube station, and I see a guy with a needle sticking out of his veins. So I just sit myself down next to him, and I drop him my spare change. Tell him about my lifetime, how my mum's going down a slippery slope, and how I'm doing my best so we can carry on and cope. And he responds with a few words of peace and happiness, describing humanity as a lost art form. A museum relic which we once treasured, like whatever happened to love thy neighbor. And he spoke and I listened and on past time, but after half an hour I had to go, so I thanked him for his mind. I thanked him for his words of wisdom and wished him a nice day. But as I walked down those wet steps, I heard him whimper, "Please stay." And I fucking hated myself for that whole journey, because I could have stayed and talked. Sat with him in the cold, maybe even gone for a walk, but I, the guy with who he saw eye to eye, kept walking. Anyway, I arrived at Caledonian Road tube station to go and join my friends at their yard, right? So it's North Road Estate where the youngsters live at large. See, basically me and my friends, we had this little operation, right? It's this quick intimidation and snatch. We basically rob other kids so we can look after our own backs. So I walk into my friend's house, and as soon as I do, he tells me he got a text through that a couple of kids are leaving the the theatre opposite. And he asked me if I wanted to roll through for a quick snatch and grab. And I just say, "Nah, man, I'm done with that shit," after the chat with the homeless man I had. He said, "Suit yourself," as the 5 of them walked off. Right? These 5 hooded figures with 5 different minds heading down towards the theatre to win a quick 5 dimes. Now, these 5 different men were my type of guys, but after just one chat, they seemed different through my eyes. So I go to the window, and I watch them run down the stairs and through the courtyard and onto North Road where the theatre lies, and they're running up to and standing in front of the other kids, demanding the pretty penny in their pockets. And, as usual, the other kids look scared and dumbfounded, and without a word sounded, they just hand over their possessions. But just as this one kid is handing over his BlackBerry, he hits Matthew in the face, right? My friend Matthew. And Matthew gets hit, and blood just spills from his nose. Now, Matthew is seeing red, and they start exchanging blows, and the commotion grows, battle of foes, blood spread red as the rose, and the posh kids now scarper as they couldn't face what they sowed. And Matthew's got this kid's head, and he's just stamping on it again and again. And it's a proper sobering sight as the blood begins to just darken around him on the concrete. And I'm just thinking that someone needs to stop this. I need to stop this. So I just run. And I run down the stairs and through the courtyard and onto North Road where the theatre lies. And as I turn the corner, I see this guy just running with his heart heavy beating and his lungs deep breathing as he's running towards this gaggle of seething demons. And I'm feeling that he's there to save his friend, to put an end to the bloodshed, to the slaughter, put an end. But he runs in and with the right fist, he knocks Matthew to the floor. And I say, "No, fuck that. You touch my friend, you wage war." And I'm running now with hella adrenaline pumping through my veins. And all the pain in my brain has finally become unchained. There's no peace within this beast, just darkness within my brain. And I run in and pull Matthew off the floor. He's got a broken nose and a shattered jaw. And I go to join the fight, but he pulls me back. And he says, "I don't want him to leave as a survivor." And he puts his hand into his pocket and he pulls out a screwdriver. And I take it and I just head on in. But as I do, he sees me and he tries to get away, but he gets caught in our crowd and the voices grow loud. He's caught and he feels drowned. And then I stab him hard in the back, which throws him down to the ground. And then he turns over. And we lock eye contact. And within those eyes, I can see a flicker of terror. You know, like it's telling me what I've just done. I can't deal with his eyes, and then I stab him again in the right lung. And then all the voices grow deathly silent. And it's just me alone on the street. And I'm at the top of North Road now, and he's at the bottom. And as the sword of Damocles manically swings above my head, my conscience tells my head that I have to call an ambulance. You know, I can't just let this guy bleed out and die, simply stand by as death sings its sweet lullaby. We may not have seen eye to eye, but I'd be horrified if I just stood by and let this innocent guy die. And I go into my pocket and I pull out my phone. And yeah, I got stabbed when I was 16. And 2 years later, I met up with the person who stabbed me under controlled conditions, and we spoke about where we came from and the events of that day. And there was no malice involved. It was just about how we were forever connected by that moment. And I wanted to tell you that story just to continue the conversation, because I think the more we speak about it, the more we can do to stop this terrible epidemic that's happening in London. So yeah, thank you. I've been Dan Whitlam, and have a lovely night.